Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Texas Electricity Ratings. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined this morning by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, and a lot to talk about this morning, guys. But let's start with basketball, more specifically women's basketball. They're going to be playing Iowa State this evening in the Big 12 Tournament Championship. Jerry, I'll let you lead.
Well, I mean, I think the Texas women's are headed for a number 2 seed, a solid 2 seed. They played Iowa State only once this year, with the expanded Big 12, which is now 14. You don't play both teams twice. Texas beat Iowa State 81-60 at home in the regular season. They have a post player that's big and burly and tough. And so the Texas women have to have 2 feet in the paint, powerful stance, make her play over them, not through them. If they do that, Texas will be all right. I think Texas has is Madison Booker's a pretty special player. If you haven't watched on the women's side, she's going to be a top 3 pick in the future WNBA draft. Madison Booker's a tremendous talent.
Texas scored 10. I think it was 10 of the last 13 points last night or yesterday afternoon to win that game. Kansas State had come back to tie it 61-all. We're watching. Watch this. Look at Vic Schaefer's reaction, man. He's jacked, dude. They came back. Shea Holly hit a big 3 and then followed it up with an out-of-bounds play, Jerry, for a layup to put Texas up and kind of put the game away. But they won 71-64. To your point, they played Iowa State. That's a rematch from last year in the Big 12 title game as well. So good luck to the ladies this afternoon or this evening, excuse me.
The best thing that happened for Texas yesterday, it's in tournament play. This stuff matters. And when you start getting into 3 games in 3 days, is Madison Booker got in early foul trouble and she had to sit for about 12 minutes in the first half. That's probably the best thing that happened for Texas yesterday, that you won and she got to sit. So now she's going to have she may have the freshest legs on the court today.
That's good stuff. Hopefully they win the Big 12 title on the way out. That's that's kind of the whole idea behind a lot of this today, or this year, is winning that Big 12 title on the way out of town. So,
and the men play Wednesday, 6 p.m. I believe that is 6 p.m. against Kansas State in a 7-10 game. Seeding won't matter, win or lose for Texas. Everybody pretty much has them on the 8 seed line right now. I think they could be a 7. Jerry Palm has Texas a 9. I'm not sure I buy that. But 1 win, 1 loss doesn't hurt Texas from a seeding standpoint. They'd stick on that 8-9 line if they lost, wherever they fall. If they win, then you get the chance at Iowa State. And if you can win that game, if you win 2, that means you knocked off Iowa State, who's a top 3 seed in the tournament. So if you do that, then you have you have a real shot to be a 7 seed come Sunday, which would be big to get off that 8-9 line.
Definitely.
Jerry, what's realistic? Hey, hold on a second, Blake. What's realistic for this Texas team? I mean, are we expecting 1 win in the tourney and out? Not in the Big 12, but in the NCAA tournament. That's what it feels like right now. Is 1 win is meeting expectations.
If you can get off the 8-9 seed line, Texas is. I've been saying, is a really good offensive team. When you have Disu and Asmus, you have 2 guys who you have to legitimately game plan for. And as long as Tyrese Hunter, he's not going to have the game he did against Oklahoma. I think all Texas fans know he's a roller coaster, right? But if he can string a couple of good games together as the 3rd option, this team, if they can get off that 8-9 seed line, I feel pretty good that they could win 2 games in the tournament because they're that good offensively. I mean, they're a top 20 offense in college basketball. All your adjusted offensive rankings, they are top 50 in the country in 3-point shooting, which might surprise some casual basketball fans. Texas is a really good 3-point shooting team, and top 50 free throw shooting. It's the best free throw shooting team Texas has had in my years covering them. They're top 50. They're right around 50 in an effective field goal percentage. This is a really good offensive team. They have to win on offense because they're middle of the road on defense. They're just too small at guard and then don't have burly rim protectors behind it. They just don't have that match. But offensively, if they can get to that 7-10 game, which 7-10, 8-9s are somewhat toss-up games. But if you can get past that game, the 2 seeds in this tournament, I mean, you can beat those guys. You're good enough offensively to beat those guys. I don't necessarily like the matchups for Texas as an 8-9 if they win that game and they're in against UConn as a 1, against Tennessee, and because Rick's got the burlier, more physical team. Dalton Knecht obviously is a good offensive player, but those aren't the good matchups for Texas. Obviously, you wouldn't be in Houston's bracket as a 1. Then the other one is Purdue and Zach Edey and whatever. He's to me, he's one of the most overrated players in college history. Credit to him for winning a Wooden or Heisman or whatever, the basketball Heisman. But it's Braden Smith, the sophomore point guard, that's gotten a lot better for Purdue. And if Purdue makes a run, it's because Braden Smith's game has gone up about 5 notches from first year to second year. So if Texas can get to the 7-10 game, win that one, I think they're offensively good enough to beat some of the 2 seeds. I don't think these are great teams in college basketball this year. I think there's a bunch of really good teams.
Hey, we have a few basketball-related questions while we're on it, so no better time than now to talk about it. But Too Broke to Pension says, if the men's basketball team wins against Kansas State, can they legitimately beat Iowa State? The game from earlier in the year looks like it may have been even closer than 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Texas can win that game. I mean, that would be an Iowa State home game, essentially, because Iowa State's going to travel in basketball much more than Texas will, and that's in Kansas City, right? So I think Iowa State's the favorite and would be for a reason. But can Texas win that game? Yeah, Texas can win that game. For Texas, it's pretty much 2 things for this team. When you understand that if you don't expect a great defensive performance, it's not a great defensive basketball team. This is not suddenly going to be a team that locks people down. It's not going to happen. So they have to maximize offensively for a 1, 2, 3 game type of stretch. If they do that, they can beat about anybody. I mean, you saw that. I mean, look, Texas has scored 80+ points in 4 games in a row in the Big 12. That says something for how good offensive team you are. And that's a road game, 81 at Tech, 81 against Oklahoma State at home, 85 in the loss to Baylor, and then 94 against Oklahoma. Okay, that's 3 tournament teams, and they put up 80+ on all of them. They're playing really good offensive basketball right now. Problem in the Big 12 tournament is, and I'm serious, people get on me for saying this. If Texas beats Kansas State and they happen to beat Iowa State, I just sit out DSU after that. I don't care if you win the big play for it or not. I'm not sure you want to get in the making DSU play 3 games in 3 days scenario with some of the knee soreness he continues to play through in his career. I mean, if you win a couple of games, I hate to go NBA on it, guys, but they're pushing the envelope a little bit too much for me.
That's interesting. No, I mean, I'm not. I like the thought process there, at least, Jerry, because at that point you're not necessarily playing for the Big 12 title. You're playing for how far do you go in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Like, I'm not big on sitting out.
I'm not either.
I hate it. But that may be an intriguing scenario because we all know what his injury history has been. Yep. And I don't want to say fragile, right? That may not be the right term, but he's definitely had issues, and every year, not just once, right? And it's ongoing. And he just had this knee strain, I guess, is what they're officially calling it. But that's interesting. And maybe the wear and tear of multiple games back to back to back, et cetera, might be problematic. I'm not for sitting out. But
I'm not either.
What you just put out there, though, it sounded right in some ways. And some people may disagree with us, but I think I get where you're going with it.
And then a couple more basketball questions real quick, Jerry, before we move on. Do you see Max or Dylan being draftable?
I don't. I don't, but that doesn't look, I mean, they're both going to have careers in basketball. And I'm not saying DSU can't go in the second round, but I just think the injury history is going to be the toughest thing for him. But a late second round flyer on him wouldn't be totally out of the question. But I just think with the injury history, that it's kind of like the same thing Jordan Whittington battles, right? When you get in front of all those NBA teams, NFL teams, and they start really digging into it, and they see, okay, major knee surgery, you're out about a year. A major foot surgery, you're out 8 months. He's had some major injuries in his career, and the game only gets faster and more grueling at the NBA level. So, I think both those guys will have careers in basketball. Max Abmas will have a career in basketball. I mean, look, I don't think, it's hard to say because some guys just will themselves because they shoot the ball so well. I mean, Memphis for a while had a 5'8.5" starting point guard this year for 18 games in the NBA due to injury, but that guy was on a two-way contract and started 18 games in the NBA. So for anybody saying, no, he can't, he's too small, well, you're not following the NBA. You can if you shoot the ball well enough or if you're a reliable player, smart defender, can lead a team. Could he be on a two-way contract one day? Wouldn't shock me with him. But those guys are going to have careers in basketball. They're going to make good money. It's just going to be where. Can they be two-way contract players? Look, there's not a player in the NBA that makes less than $1.2 million this year. Period. If you're on a two-way contract, you're making 900 plus.
What is two-way contract for those uneducated? They play in and out of the roster basically with the
rosters have expanded. They move up and down to the G League, so the team has the rights to those guys, and they can move them about the cabin, as I call it, from G League to the NBA injury whenever they need to. Jabari Rice is on one of those contracts this year, so it's a tough. The NBA is extremely difficult to make because it's a worldwide sport now, a truly worldwide sport. But if you can get to the two-way contract area code as a guy like Jabari Rice, Max Asmus, Dylan Dessou, then you make really good moves. Drew Timmy's on one of those, right? Great college player, but doesn't fit the NBA game because he can't shoot it. You can make a tremendous living playing the game you love.
All right. Before we move on, guys, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about our sponsor, Texas Electricity Ratings.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of y'all still living in Texas and in the major cities with deregulated electricity like Dallas and Houston, you understand that the deregulated electricity market can be confusing. Texas Electricity Ratings is a shopping website that lets you compare prices, read customer reviews, and find an electricity plan that fits your needs. It also filters out a lot of the gimmicky plans on websites like Power to Choose that trick customers into expensive bills. So if you're in the market for a new electricity plan, shop TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF for all your electricity needs. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF for all your electricity needs. And they say hook them to a Longhorn Nation out there. I will say this: summer is not that far away in the state of Texas. So get ready with your right electricity plan this coming summer.
All right, y'all. Captain Americano says Sark has got recruiting on skate, playing that long game. Jerry, there's been a lot going on in recruiting. You were busy all the way till pretty late last night breaking recruiting news on TexasFootball.com. What's the latest?
Yeah, there's some big visit news. I mean, we broke it on Texas Football yesterday that Hayden Lowe, I'd mentioned him last week on the recruiting breakdown with CJ Vogel. When we did that, I'd mentioned just a guy to watch. Hayden Lowe had told me last week that, he was still talking to Texas. And it hasn't really been reported but in our industry. But Hayden Lowe is now scheduled an official visit for June 14th through 16th. He's also coming in April 6th. And he is from Westlake Village there in California, plays at Oaks Christian. No good players have come out of there ever, by the way. Just go look at the wiki page. But this is a 6'5", 6'4.5", 240-pound edge guy with long arms. Played in 8 games last year, had a little nagging injury, but productive guy, had a couple of interceptions, has 100 tackles in 3 years of high school football there in California. And that's not playing 12, 14, 15-game seasons, by the way. That's playing 8, 10 games a season. But Hayden Lowe, very interesting news. And he told me late last night that it was Johnny Nansen and Pete Kwiatkowski that both came through the school in January. So, look, this is a guy that Texas has quietly been on. They're on some guys in California, and recruiting's different in California in that you don't get to just pounded daily and 2-day updates on guys, right, Bobby? It's a little different out there. But he's another guy from California that's now on the official visitors list. And that makes John Mills out of St. Ignatius. I talked to John Mills last night, the offensive lineman out of San Francisco. He's now scheduled Cal and USC for official visits, along with Texas and Washington. I think Texas, Washington are the top two He's had a number of family members that were college athletes at Washington. But then, Marcus Harris from Mater Dei coming in as well. So Jordan Davison will be in June for his official visit. He's got the date. He hadn't released it yet. So there's a Marco Jones out of Northern California, an edge linebacker that Texas is recruiting, Adonis Curry, who I believe is a high 4-star corner out of Quartz Hill. That should be a awesome looking high school if you have that name, up in Lancaster, California. He's supposed to be in June, but hasn't released the date. So that was another big name in California that's scheduled up an official visit to Texas. Then there's also, late last night, I talked to Smith Arogbo, the edge out of A-Leaf Hastings, home of Rod Wright, if you remember those days at A-Leaf Hastings when they used to have a lot of players come through. But Arogbo will visit Texas unofficially April 6th. Big development. Jeff Banks, area recruiter, offered him January 22nd when he was by Hastings High School. This was from my visit to Hastings High in December, that picture of Arogbo. He's a legit 6'5", 215, big feet. I think he's a 17 shoe guy, maybe even 18. I think it's 17 if I remember right. But young for his class. He's a lot very similar to Zena in his frame. He's just further behind Zena in the development of that frame. Obviously, Zena has an older brother, Neto, so they were footballing it up, working out together. But then Zena's also been with Daughtry in that group and McKinney that we had on the show. So Zena's had that personal trainer to help his physical development going on a year, right? So Arogbo's behind, similar frame to Zena, but further behind in the development of that frame. Right now as a junior, going to be senior at Hastings High School. But he is Smith Arogbo, very talented guy, very quick first step, long arms. Key there is it's going to need some patience in his development, Bobby. I know you like him on tape, but he's a guy that has a lot of upside.
Yeah, I loved him. Frankly, I like guys that are physical or very aggressive with their hands early. Yeah. Because that allows them, and he clearly has strong hands too, Jerry.
Yeah.
And so that allows them to develop, I think, at a little faster rate than some guys that let the play come to them or run into them and kind of chest bump. I know you don't teach that. We're going to talk to somebody that doesn't teach that, I think, coming up here in a second. But I like Smith Arogbo because he's violent. Yeah. That's probably my number one feature. And that we say that you can't throw that word away when you talk about defensive linemen or offensive linemen. Violence is a little bit, it's a hard word because a lot of people are, they're technicians, they're this, they're that. Violent is just a different category. Daniel Cruz was violent.
Yes.
Smith Arogbo, in my opinion, is violent. That's where I'm going with.
Okay, guys. Well, real quick, I'm going to read this super chat, then we're going to bring in our special guest, UT Boy. Thank you, UT Boy. He says, good morning. Thank you for these live streams and hook 'em. Thank you for tuning in, and all of you for tuning in. And with that said, gentlemen, I'm going to bring in Marcus Hutchins, former DeSoto offensive lineman, former Longhorn, now at Cedar Hill.
Yeah, hey, Marcus, thanks for joining this morning. We got a lot of questions for you, man, about the triplets at Cedar Hill, man. You got to tell everybody about that from my visit. But first, I want to start with University of Texas talk, man. Your thoughts watching Texas this year as a former offensive lineman at Texas, that development of the offensive line under Kyle Flood. I just wanted to get your general thoughts on the Horns and Kyle Flood right now.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm super excited to see what the University of Texas is in the direction that they're going. I think they're heading in the right direction with Coach Shark and those guys, Coach Flood, and those guys that are there. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do this year. I mean, on a national championship page last year, I think they're gonna bounce back with the guys that they're recruiting and the guys that they're gonna bring in. I think they're gonna bounce back, and I think they're gonna have another appearance there. So I'm super excited for them and can't wait to see them perform this year.
For the Texas fans, real quick, for the Texas fans that may not know, Marcus is offensive line coach at Cedar Hill. He's also serves as the recruiting coordinator, I believe, for Cedar Hill, just kind of oversees the recruiting of the Cedar Hill athletes. So that means he coaches some of the best talent in DFW. That also means he's in the what do you call it, Blake? The district of doom up there. Yeah.
The District of Doom. Hey, Marcus, I had a question for you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned all of that stuff about Texas, and you played on the offensive line at Texas.
Mhm.
What specifically strikes you about guys like Kelvin Banks and Jake Majors and I don't know DJ Campbell? Are those guys like Campbell and Banks in particular? Are they just like freak athletes to be that big? Is that kind of where you come across it? Because you're a big guy yourself. I mean, you played offensive line, but
Mhm.
you and I both know it takes a little something extra to be a potential pro, right? And
Yeah.
is that what you're seeing from that group of offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like this group is a little different. And just moving forward, I think we got some youngsters just in this area that are really, really talented. The 25 class is loaded with offensive linemen. Of course, we all know that. But I think like the 26, there's a couple in that class that I think they're kind of being slept on, but they're huge, big upsized guys, long arms. And then you backdoor with the 27 class. So I mean, it's just insane how big these dudes are, how long they are, and how physical they are. I mean, it's a lot different from when I played. I can say that it's a lot different.
Hey, Marcus. So up at Cedar Hill this year, for the Texas fans that don't know, I'm going to kind of give you a preview, and then I'll let Coach Hutchins talk about this. There's Jordan Coleman, 6'5", 360, not fat, by the way. There's Devin Coleman, 6'4", 320. And then there's Isaiah Coleman, 6'2", 260, a defensive lineman. Marcus, every year it seems like, okay, this has never happened in my 2 decades in this business. I've never covered triplets that are legitimate Power 5 prospects. I mean, y'all are home to those guys at Cedar Hill, and you coach 2 of them with Texas offers that are officially visiting Texas June 21st through 23rd, Jordan and Devin Coleman. So tell Texas fans a little bit about those 2 guys, and then the triplets, man, because that's a very rare thing.
So Jordan is just an exceptional athlete. Just to have all 3 of them is a blessing. But Jordan has played offensive line majority of his life. He's about 6'6", 361. That's the last measurement we had. And to be able to move all that and to be able to move very well, man, he's going to be a dude once he gets to the next level. And then you talk about Devin Coleman. Devin Coleman, who's only spent a year, not even a full year with me at offensive line, just picking up and grasping the basic concepts. I'm excited to see what he's going to do with me and Coach Ashcraft, who's now online, who's now on board with us, helping with the offensive line. And I'm super excited to see how he pans out. And you get Isaiah. Isaiah is what I like to call the runt. The smallest one, but he has the biggest heart. He plays extremely physical. He plays extremely fast, and all 3 of those together are very lethal.
Yeah. And Marcus, what blew me away the day I was there was y'all's young kids in the program. A 2027 running back / defensive lineman who doesn't know he's going to be a defensive tackle yet, but a couple of edge guys that are young. I mean, there are so many, like you said, there's a lot of large humans that are really good athletes in that district and at Cedar Hill. And you went up against some of those guys, Colin Simmons and Alex January, who are freshmen at Texas. What were kind of your takeaways from those guys?
So again, in this business, if you got 5 guys that can play up front, like really, really good up front, it makes your job easy, especially in this district. I have a guy named Leroy Woolridge, who anchored the right tackle position. And to give up 0 sacks, against Colin Simmons in 2 years as a sophomore and a junior. And then I have Kobe Oliver, who did the exact same thing, gave up 0 sacks against them. And then again, interior, you have Anthony Gates and Jordan Coleman, being able to move Alex January out the middle. I think it just makes my job easy. It makes those guys that's on the outside jobs easy. Like I said, I'm just extremely blessed to have guys like that. I mean, I got 5 returning starters. Kobe Oliver, Jordan Coleman, DeAnthony Gates, Leroy Woodridge, and then I have my young pup, my freshman, who actually gave me significant minutes last year, Braylon Johnson. So I'm super excited to see what these guys are going to do their senior year and their sophomore year, with a couple extra guys I have coming up out of that freshman class as well. So again, I'm just super blessed to have like these big guys in this district to be able to help those guys in the backfield move bodies and score touchdowns, keep our offense thriving and going.
Good stuff, Marcus. Marcus, he asked you about Colin Simmons and Alex January in particular. What do you think of those guys as players for Duncanville?
Those dudes are dudes. I mean, anybody that comes out of Duncanville or anybody that comes out of this district in general, they're dudes. It's like you said, like you guys said, this district is a hard district to play in. So to be able to thrive and be successful in this district, man, you got to be a dude. Alex January is a massive human being. He's very physical. He's gonna strike. He's gonna come off the ball. He's gonna strike it. He's gonna use his hands, strike you, knock you back, and go make a play. And that's one of the things this year I made emphasis on Jordan. If you want to make a name for yourself, you got to make him off of Alex January, because he's a dude. That dude is a dude, and he's gonna play football. So if you want to be that elite guy, man, you gotta play the elite guy. And that was Alex January. And then Colin Simmons. He's just a freak of an athlete. Long, fast, quick, always around the ball. I gave him his respect. And again, the first year O-line coach here at Cedar Hill, varsity O-line coach here at Cedar Hill, man, just to see him play and having to coach against him was very physical. Coming up with those notes, those scouting notes, was very hard. Just trying to see what his weakest point was, try to see, what I can do to make sure our guys, quote unquote, was prepared to play him. And it was very hard because he's just a dude. He's an athlete. And I think Texas got two hell of athletes there. As freshmen, that's going to help that program grow and have a major impact.
I got a different question for you, Marcus. Why coaching? Why did you personally? I mean, you played at Texas, had a good career. Why did you choose coaching? I mean, I know certain people do it for certain reasons, but what was your calling?
I just wanted to pay it forward. I feel like somebody paid it forward to me, so I wanted to pay it forward to the younger generation. Of course, I had a coach like Clyde Mathis, who helped me out along my way, who helped me through my journey, not just in high school, but all the way through college and even right now in this coaching profession. And I just feel like it was something that I love to do, and I love to inspire our younger generation, especially offensive linemen. Like I said, there's plenty of offensive linemen in this area, in the DFW area, even in the Houston area, that don't see a lot of true offensive line coaches that have played it, that have experienced it, and is going to put you through the fire to get you ready for that next level. So I honestly felt like it was just something that was in my heart and that I had a calling for, and I wanted to make sure I the same thing that those guys did for me when I was younger, I do it for these guys that are younger and help them pave the way. So.
Hey, Marcus, we had a question from the chat. Who's the best, most impressive defensive lineman you went up against in your years at Texas?
I would say
on the spot on that one.
I would say Oakman. Oakman was was that guy at Baylor that, of course, everybody hype, kind of put around the building, was like, yeah, he's a dude, he's this, he's that, da da da. And I was like, all right, I got a challenge. He was my in my sense of Colin Simmons. He was my Colin Simmons, where I had to step up and I had to play. And that really showed me whether or not I was a true Division I athlete, or was I just kind of a guy that was there. And I think I want to say I did very well. I did very well against him and in that game. I would say so myself, but if you ask Coach Wickline is a hard coach to play for. And I think he gave me a lot of critiques, but I also think he showed me some love at the same time. Because, again, that was a dude. He was a dude for sure.
Hey, Marcus, I'm sure you've had a chance to visit with Coach Flood before, right? Whether when he came to Cedar Hill or just talking about Jordan and Devin. Kind of what are as a former offensive lineman who coaches offensive linemen now, what are your takeaways and thoughts on Kyle Flood?
I love him as a coach. I wish I would have played for him. I think he's very personal. I think he's very open. I know I for sure knows he knows X's and O's. I see what that offense did at O-line and that offense did at Texas. I'm just super excited, that he's coming in and offering my guys and want to coach them. And I'm just seeing the passion that he brings and the personal relationship he's trying to build and with those guys and that family. And again, I'm somewhat kind of jealous because I wish I would have played for him, but I'm also excited for him. I can't wait to see what they're gonna do. If that's the school that they choose, I can't wait to see them go play for Coach Flood and their program. But I think he's just an awesome dude. I think he's a guy that I've got a chance to know throughout this recruiting process, and has opened the door for me to come down and learn and gain some experience. So,
Hey, Marcus, you guys on spring break this week?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm actually about to get in head track practice.
There you go. Hey, well, go enjoy yourself, man. Have a good spring break. We appreciate you joining us here on Texas Football. And best of luck to you guys this spring and then into the fall. We'll be following you. I know Jerry will be probably back up there to see you too in the future.
I welcome anybody to come out. Like I said, we have some really talented dudes here at Cedar Hill. Not just the triplets, man. I have 5 offensive linemen that can truly play. We have skilled guys that can go, and like Gary said, we have some young guys that are some dudes. And I'm excited to see, excited that this staff is here at Cedar Hill, and we're gonna do what we need to do to get us back on the map, kind of where Joey had it. So we're going to kind of put it back where Joey had it and what he built under Coach Ward and this staff. So I'm super excited.
All right.
And that is true. I mean, look, when I go around, a lot of times you go watch the off-season workouts. The off-season workouts tell you a lot about where a program's headed. Very organized. The guys were totally bought in the day I was there. I was there the day they were maxing on the squat and Jordan hit 600 pounds. But the guys were locked in. I put a video on Twitter that day, the entire team cheering on everybody. I mean, there's a buy-in at Cedar Hill. These guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, the coaches most definitely think.
Playoffs last year, 4 rounds deep in the playoffs last year, and we'll have just as good or better team this year. So congrats on everything, Marcus, and we'll see you soon.
All righty, I appreciate you.
Welcome, Marcus.
Welcome.
Marcus Hutchins, everybody, great interview. Lots of information there, very informative. And speaking of informative, Jerry, I need you to inform folks out there about Mando.
All right, you look, Texas A&M offensive line. I'm talking about y'all. Y'all need this Mando, man. Y'all smelled so bad, teams just went right around you. They didn't even bother bull rushing your offensive line last year. So my guys, if you ever lift a little too hard or just forget to apply your daily deodorant and get hit by a truckload of BO from all directions, does that 3-in-1 shampoo leave you needing a second shower just a few hours after the first? From the founders of Lume, Mando Whole Body Deodorant is helping men conquer their odor in a new way. Formulated with mandelic acid, Mando has a long-lasting 72-hour odor control that actually stops odor before it starts. Best part is you can put Mando everywhere. Pits, packages, feet, skin folds, back, knees, everywhere. To top it off, Mando's cologne quality scents were created with men in mind. Pro tip, try their best-selling bourbon leather. It's a game changer. Once you experience fresher underarms, a fresher package, and fresher feet, you'll never go back. Special offer. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code and link. Use On Texas, all caps, at shopmando.com. Shopmando.com. And Bobby Burton, it's already been a hit in the Burton household from what you said yesterday.
Yes, my wife actually likes it. So that's a starter. That's a check. You know, you talk about checking all the boxes in recruiting. If the wife likes it, it's a check in my household. So yes, there you go. Hey, bunch of questions coming in from the chat that we want to get to today. Jerry, I've got one that I want to start with you and see what you have to say about this. And that's this guy right here, the quarterback out of Duncanville, Keelon Russell, is shooting up the recruiting rankings. This one from living rent-free and in UT. Well, you know, Texas already has KJ Lacey in this recruiting class, but they are talking to Keelon Russell. I think Texas needs to do that to kind of make sure they're not getting, you know, you got to keep irons in the fire.
That's right.
Well, what are your thoughts about Keelon Russell and what he brings to the table?
Yeah, I talked about him last year during spring practice on this channel. He was one of the very impressive to me at Duncanville spring practice. I was there the day that there was probably 7 Power 5 coaches there, 3 to 5 offensive coordinators. I think it was 5. But one of those offensive coordinators, a Big 12 offensive coordinator, was one of the first to offer him, and he was there that day. And he walked up. He said, "How much have you actually watched this guy?" I said, "Not enough." And he said, "He's very, very good." And that spring practice day, what impressed me about Keelon Russell was, one, he was starting to grow into his frame. He's 6'3", tall kid, 6'3.5", but he managed his team that day in a spring practice. He changed ball speeds. He was going to second progressions a lot. He was not a locked-on quarterback, and it's easy to be locked on when DeCorian Moore is your wideout, okay, when he's your number one at Duncanville. It's easy to get locked on to that guy because he's going to be open every single time. But I thought the way he moved in the pocket, I thought that he changed the ball speeds. And look, while they weren't hitting him in that spring practice, make no mistake, Colin Simmons and out January affect the pocket on every play. So you don't get to be a relaxed quarterback in that setting. You actually have to keep your feet moving and your eyes up. And he did all those things. He's a very talented quarterback. SMU last year did a great job getting him committed early. And now they're going to have to fight to hold on to him. He's had a lot of offers, a lot of Power 5 offers since that time. The day I was there last spring, Bobby Petrino and A&M offered him. And that's when he was really starting to take off. Kendall Browse, a few others had offered him before that, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. So he's that level quarterback for sure. And if you're going to recruit a second quarterback in case KJ Lacey bolts to Auburn or Ole Miss, which we're not saying that's happening. He's got 3 visits. KJ Lacey has 3 visits set up to Texas. Keelon Russell should be the other quarterback you recruit if you're Texas.
Got it. Hey, and you mentioned Smith Arogbo earlier. He has not set up an official visit. It's just coming in for a January visit. Antoine wanted that to be better defined.
Yeah, he's coming in April 6th. That's the big unofficial visit weekend around the spring practice, which will probably be a spring scrimmage, right? Chase Sims from Richmond Randall, the D tackle, who was recently offered by Kenny Baker, he's also coming in that week. So there's a few of those guys that haven't set up official visits that are coming in for unofficial visits April 6th. I do believe official visits will follow for a few of these guys that are coming in April 6th. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was 2 of them.
Got it.
We got a couple. I want to go back to Russell for just a second there, Jerry, because we have a couple of questions regarding him. Too Broke to Pay Attention says, does he mainly lock on to Moore mostly since he's a beast at wide receiver, or can he distribute the ball well to other targets?
No, that's what impressed me the day I was at spring practices is he did a good job in distributing the ball. And look, in a game, if he's not looking DK Moore's way a lot, that's probably bad decision making on some level because DeCorian Moore's always going to be open and he will make huge plays. But Duncanville has 2 more undersized, younger slot receivers. One of them's on that 4x100 team that's running 40.6 already. They're very good players. They have a young tight end that kind of plays the flex split wide guy who's a D1 Power 5 guy as well. There is multiple Power 5 FBS receivers at Duncanville, as you'd imagine. Kim likes it when I say there's 35 Division I players over there, which I believe there are. But he does a good job distributing the ball. But at the same time, he's looking DeCorian Moore's way a lot, as he should be. Any quarterback that doesn't is probably making a mistake at the high school level.
And then one other one about him, then I want to jump to DeCorian Moore, but Archmania says Russell has some skins on the wall. How big of a deal is that when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a great question, Archmania. This is one of the things I love about Keelon Russell, Bobby, is Duncanville's had some really talented teams. Coach Samples has had some heartbreaks in the state championship before the last 2, to say the least, or playoff games. This is the best quarterback Duncanville's had in my years in the business. But it's because he's a passer first, second, third, and he can run, but he is the first true pocket passer with athletic ability outside the pocket that Duncanville's had. Jaquindon Jackson was a heck of a player. They may have won state if he didn't tear that knee up late in the playoffs. You could argue that for sure. But J.Q. Jackson was more of an athlete playing the position that didn't really project the quarterback long-term. Keelon Russell projects the quarterback long-term. He could have a future there. And the fact that he's helped bring home 2 state titles, and I think really good chance. Nothing you can say Marcus Hutchins he's gonna get after me for saying this. Really good chance at 3 because that guy's the signal caller. It's 1-2. Bobby. I mean, he's kind of taken Duncanville to that next level.
I will say this: winning championships and all that. The Archmania, the one position that matters the most to me is quarterback. So you can be an offensive tackle and win a state championship. You played your role. Don't get me wrong; it's positive, okay. But winning a state championship at quarterback is a different category. You've led your team through the whole shebang. You've answered every call, right? So it's a little bit different. I will say there's that, and then there's also playing on a team that is a winning team. Like I go back to all the guys at Katy back in the day, right? Or even now, they're still a good team. But they came out with a certain level of, I don't want to use the word professionalism, but maturity about them, Jerry. Like you knew they were going to go to work in the weight room when they came out. That doesn't mean they weren't already maxed out to some degree, because that can happen at Westlake and those places where they're so hard charging at an early age compared to maybe another place where they're playing 3 or 4 sports growing up. But from a winning perspective or a state championship perspective, I think that's huge. I absolutely.
And I'll say this: I want to add a couple of things to that. And especially if you're at a program that's kind of got close, but they hadn't got over the hump, and you kind of the best quarterback they've had. But there's so many layers to this conversation, though, because one of the knocks on Arch coming out was, oh, they didn't win state. Well, neither did Peyton or Eli or Arch at Isidore Newman. So there's some programs you're just not going to. I watched Isidore Newman. They weren't winning state. Sorry. I don't care. If they had Vince Young, they weren't going to win state in high school. People would say, what, you're nuts. Trust me. They would have lost because there's comes to a certain level where you're just not talented enough to win, period. You go up against 10 or 12 Division I players on a team, you're not going to beat that team. Pat Mahomes didn't win a state title at White House. Obviously, if he was at Duncanville, he'd have won a state title. So there's layers to that as well. But I think with Keelon, what he's done is he's helped Duncanville get over the hump because he's the first pure quarterback that maybe they've had that was on that talented level. And for him to come in and do that, I think that says a lot about him as a young guy. He won that job as a sophomore, and he's kind of excelled. He's kept his foot on the accelerator every year. I expect his senior year to be his best.
And we're going to talk about another Duncanville product. Ekion wants to know, how does the Corian Moore compare to the current receivers at Texas as high school seniors?
Better. He's just more. He just moves different. I don't know. Sometimes that's the best way to explain it, Bobby. I mean, there's a lot of these guys are talented. He just moves different, quicker, faster. Jackson Shipley hit on something that I love to talk about. And one of the great things, when you go to an Under Armour camp and watch 20 Power 5 receivers going drills in a row, all in a row, you see it's not the acceleration. A lot of guys can accelerate. It's who can accelerate, decel, then make a sharp cut, precise cut, and then get back the top end quickly. Jackson Shipley was talking about that. That's what makes DeCorian Moore such a extremely high-level prospect. He checks all those boxes. Accelerations, elite. Decelerations, very elite. The ability to change direction, very elite. And then again, getting the top end speed. You don't find guys that check all the boxes like DeCorian Moore very often.
He runs like a deer.
Yeah,
I will say the guy that does that decelerates well, just graduated or just left Texas for the NFL draft. That's Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is probably the closest categorized to a DeCorian Moore. You agree with that, Jerry?
Yeah. And then you see he's a 50-50 ball winner. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the difference between him and Xavier.
That's it. He can leave his feet like A.D. Mitchell and go make a play on the ball. And guys that are that fast, that have the body control to do that, and then can go make that play. And then you see the stop-start right there. He's got some violence in his cut. So is he a 5'11 and a half version of CD Lamb? That might not be a bad comparison there, because that he's faster at the same age. But CD Lamb tested very well.
Just tremendous player.
Yeah.
Tremendous prospect.
There's Keelon Russell's athleticism in the pocket, by the way. On that
Hey, we have a question coming in asking about Jonte Cook's 100-meter time. Jerry, we talked about all these other guys and all of their 100-meter times. And, I think that one of the things that, and it comes in from Kerry Seaman. Thanks for the question, Kerry. Look, he's not a speed demon. And right. One of the reasons you don't see a lot of 100-meter time for him is because DeSoto's good in track. so he wasn't necessarily needed in track, right, Jerry?
He was more of a long jumper. Went 20. I was looking at 22:10 was his, I believe, his personal record there. So I mean, he was probably a 10.8, 500-meter guy if you put him on the track. But the jumps are where he really was at his strength. And again, like you said, Bobby, I mean, 10.8, 10.8, in that range is a really good 100-meter time. Duncanville or DeSoto, I mean, it puts you on the second team.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on anybody.
I know. That's what's crazy to me. I mean, that's what I was
just
talking
about. Just look at Duncanville's 4x1 right now. It's DeCorian Moore, 5-star, Caden Durham, running back going to LSU. The sophomore receiver who's literally a jetpack. He was born with a jetpack on him. And then another guy that runs 10.6. I mean, so you can be really fast at one of those schools and not be on the 4x1. It's just reality.
One last question regarding prospects from the District of Doom from David Rawls. Anyone else besides Benson from Cedar Hill that signed with Texas?
Yeah, Marcus Hutchins mentioned him. Thomas Ashcraft from Cedar Hill signed as an offensive lineman who's now back coaching at Cedar Hill High School. There was also a defensive lineman. He got sick when he was at Texas. Gosh, Bobby, his name is
Jarvis Humphrey.
Jarvis Humphrey was a very talented guy who had a serious medical illness at Texas that obviously derailed his football career. But Jarvis Humphrey was a talented guy that played for Joey McGuire at signed with Texas as well.
All right, let's get to some other questions here. We'll get out of that area, that district. And E. Kim wants to know, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. Are you still doing the meetups for the Oklahoma game in Dallas or at the Michigan game, Bobby?
Definitely both. So I'm not missing either of those. So we'll be there. We have we're talking about the Michigan one right now. We're probably going to rent a house. That doesn't mean that everybody's invited to the house, but we're going to
too late, Bobby.
No, but that's the idea that we have right now. As far as OU, I don't know exactly where we may be yet. We've got to talk to some folks, et cetera. I do know that I've talked to the Dallas, Texas X's folks. I'm definitely going to be up there. Jerry and I did the golf tournament for them this past year. We want to do that again to promote their organization. So we'll be up there hanging around for that weekend as well. Hopefully a little different outcome this year in Dallas, though. Didn't like the shock of last year's loss for sure.
Well, I can tell Texas fans this, that were there at the game last year. They've removed the crickets from the Cotton Bowl, apparently. And anybody that was at the game last year that sat under the covered area knows what I'm talking about. I mean, like normally, like you go on one of the turf football fields and you get those little pellets, the rubber pellets that these companies will probably have some issues with long term from people ingesting them, but they have them all in your shoes. I left the Cotton Bowl that day and I was checking my shoes for crickets. There was a lot of crickets.
Hey, Jerry, I gotta say this, buddy. The other thing that I would add for you is our last trip to Dallas was pretty good for the Big 12 championship game.
True.
You and I did a live stream from the Walmart parking lot with Jerry World in the background. I thought that was pretty funny.
And it was about 32 degrees, and it was 33 degrees, I believe, that day. If I remember, 35.
Yes. It was very cool. I remember watching y'all shiver. So it was very cool.
The coolest thing about that was the Texas fans that watched Coffee and Football that walked up to us during the telecast or drove over or worked around there and came by and said hello. That made it all worth it.
It really did. It's fun stuff. Fun stuff.
All right, guys. James Henson, excuse me. He says, I've heard y'all talk a lot about our defensive line and the limitations at the interior tackle position. Who do y'all think will be the leaders at the defensive tackle position? And hook them.
You know, Alfred Collins is not necessarily that leader type, Jerry. I mean, he's not. And I'm not that's some people are, some people aren't. That doesn't mean he can't be a good player.
Correct.
That's part of the question, I think. And one of the reasons why you look at it, Vernon Broughton has that intangible and can be, but I don't know if he's the guy, right? Because one of the things that Rod Babers always talks about, and I agree with, if you're going to be a leader, you can't just talk it. You have to do it on the field too, right? Now, Vernon will be a starter most likely at Texas this coming year, but can he produce in a way that makes him enough of a leader on the field as well as off of it? And I don't know. I genuinely do not know the answer to that yet. But that's a fair question. It's a very fair question. Where's the leadership in that room going to come from? I think Kenny Baker is going to have to provide it.
I agree. And I think one thing I'll say too is it's tough anytime a transfer comes in to kind of take a leadership role on an established team. But if Savea comes in and has a really good spring coming off a really good Arizona team, where he was part of a leadership of a defensive line, a guy that was recruited by Johnny Nansen, obviously, it wouldn't shock me coming off winning teams, right? If you come from a winning team and you come in and you stick your flag in the ground pretty early, okay, then you have a chance in those rooms. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
And then James Henson also wants to get on the other side of the line, and he says, do y'all think Neto will start at left guard this season?
That's one of the interesting battles to me in the spring is, one, does Hayden Connor cross-train as a right tackle, right? I mean, to back up Cam Williams. If he cross-trains, that obviously offers up more reps for Neto and Cole at left guard, right? Hudson will also be working at center. But that's one of the interesting battles. I can say this, in December, last 3-4 weeks of practice of the season were by far Neto's best at Texas. If he has that same type of consistency this spring, then he'll be very much in the picture.
And our next one here from Burn Orange Horn. We forgot to talk about this at the opening of the show. Spring practice in exactly 1 week, 7 days, guys.
I'm dancing too. I'm dancing too. A little Keelan Robinson magic there.
Yes.
Hey, here's one for you, Jerry and Blake. I wanted to talk about too. Would Texas, and this is from Sark After Dark, would Texas move Ethan Burke down to defensive tackle on third down to rush the passer in a NASCAR package? Or here's a better one. Wouldn't they move Barron Sorrell inside in that category, in your opinion, Jerry? Or do they, if Simmons and Moore are that good, do they move Sorrell off the field and move Burke down? I don't know that Burke is the guy to move inside.
Well, I think my initial thought on that is, not that it's a bad thought, but the actual strength of the Texas D line next year is Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins as upfield disruptors. So that's actually taking away the strength of your D line. I worry more about Texas D line lining up against a Michigan, even though they lost the offensive line. You know what Michigan's going to try to do to Texas. You know what's coming with a first-year starting quarterback in week 2, and then at Georgia, and then at Kentucky. So I don't know if you take the size guys off the field on third downs, that's what they're actually best at, is being disruptors and getting up the field. I'm not going to rule it out, but that was my initial takeaway is if Texas had Sweat and Murphy again this year, maybe I could see taking Sweat off the field on some of those third downs and bringing in Barron Sorrell or Ethan Burke, lining them up next to a Byron Murphy. I don't know, though, with Alfred Collins and Broughton, because you're taking a lot of length and size off the field, and that's what they're going to do best.
Okay, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there.
And by the way, Jere Bledsoe, huge spring for him. If he becomes a player, that's gonna solve your NASCAR issue.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Bobby, tell folks out there about Texas electricity ratings.
Yeah, guys, for anyone shopping for electricity in the deregulated areas of Texas, TexasElectricityRatings.com is the best place to find an electricity plan for your household. For starters, it filters out the dangerous and gimmicky plans from providers that are all hat and no cattle when it comes to your monthly bill. You can shop by rate, but also by an average bill feature that actually takes into account seasonal usage to give you a real number and not some placeholder. So if you're looking for a new electricity plan, check out TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF for the best options available. Hook them from TexasElectricityRatings.com.
Hey, Sark After Dark, I see your comment. That's pretty funny.
Hey, a UT boy is saying that Jonte Cook runs a 4.33. I haven't seen or heard numbers from internal at Texas on 40s. It's interesting. They don't run them that often. They test max speed is what they're doing a lot, Jerry, with those wearable gear stuff from Catapult and whatever right now. And so you gotta, I want to see that. I believe it. I just want to hear it from someone that I know has been time there at Texas.
All right, guys. One thing that we need to talk about today are the updated Heisman odds from FanDuel here, and I'm going to put them up. Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, obviously the favorites, followed by Dylan Gabriel, then Will Howard, Nico, Jalen Milroe, and Jackson Dart. Y'all's thoughts?
Hard to argue with it for me. I think I would probably I'd probably move Jackson Dart up to where Will Howard is and flip that. I would even put Dart where Gabriel is and move that down. But hard to argue with it.
I tell you one that's a dark horse that's not mentioned here is Cameron Ward, the now Miami quarterback, by way of incarnate word to Washington State. If Miami catches fire, which is a big question mark given Mario Cristobal has a penchant for losing games he shouldn't. I'm not so sure that Cameron Ward shouldn't be higher up this list. Like Nico Imalaeva out of Tennessee, I don't see that at all. Like I don't get that. Jalen Milroe with Kalen DeBoer, Jerry, you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Milroe made a strong late run for the Heisman last year. But I actually would go with the favorite is Carson Beck right now. I mean, I know that he and Quinn Ewers are tied, and that's fine. But Beck, he's going to be on a team that is going to win 12 games, in my opinion, as long as he stays healthy. They have that much firepower, even with what they're losing. But interesting. Kelly Hyden makes a good observation here. Interesting that all but two of those guys on that list that you just put up, Blake, are in the SEC. Yep. The two that were not were Dylan Gabriel, who's now at Oregon, a transfer from OU, and Will Howard, who transferred from Kansas State to Ohio State. So two transfers. How many quarterback transfers? Hey, Blake, put that list back up. How many quarterback transfers in it? So Quinn Ewers transferred, Dylan Gabriel transferred, Will Howard transferred, Jackson Dart transferred. So 4 of 8.
Yeah.
Or 4 of 7. 4 of 7.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think if there's a sleeper out there that's not being talked about, it'd probably be the young kid at Arizona because he's got McMillan. Yeah, and he's going to put up big numbers. He's got McMillan, who's a first rounder at wideout, and they're moving into the Big 12. I could see him kind of being a guy that nobody talks about that could get some hype later in the season. But it'll be interesting to see. I think Jalen Milroe. Look, when you look at that list too, Jalen Milroe is a second-year starter. Okay, so does he make a big jump in year 2, especially with Kalen DeBoer? Alabama lost some guys, but Alabama still has a lot of talent around it. But, does he make a big jump, especially in DeBoer's offense in year 2? If DeBoer maximizes what he can do, if he helps him grow as a passer, and then you add that running element to it, in that offense, he could have a big year. I'm not sure Alabama team-wise is going to be there in DeBoer's first year. They have a lot to replace.
So I'm not so sure, like Will Howard gets the play for Ohio State. I'm not so sure that it the problem, I love Travion Henderson, their running back at Ohio State. Like I would put him up there, but then they got Keyshawn Judkins from Ole Miss. So he's going to share carries.
Yeah.
Not a single running back or wide receiver on that list. All quarterbacks.
That's what was interesting to me. No running backs at all on that list.
Yeah, it just shows you how football as a sport has changed with that focus.
Yeah. And then Naaman Roberts wants to know, do you guys think that Ewers will have enough wow moments to win the Heisman?
He's got the schedule to win the Heisman.
Yeah,
That's the reality. If he has a game at Michigan like he did at Bama, he is going to be the favorite. If Texas goes to Michigan and he has a good game, just like against Bama, and Texas wins that game and they're hooking him off the field, he's the favorite, hands down, to win the Heisman at that point in the season. Then you have OU. Then you have Georgia. He has a great schedule to win a Heisman if they put it together.
Having the game in the Midwest is huge.
Yeah.
From a Heisman voting perspective and an East Coast media, and not one of those media conspiracy guys, but playing in different areas of the country will help your profile. No doubt. Playing in the big house helps your profile. And then he'll also be in the Southeast throughout the season, and then in the state of Texas. They have the schedule. You're right about that, Jerry. They have the schedule to put him to create that profile. The wow moments is a different story. So who's going to help him make those plays, right? He's going to have to make some off-schedule plays to win the Heisman. He can't just drop back and hit people. Those days are kind of over, right?
All right, guys. We got time for just a few more questions here. And Menu Sports says, Bobby Burton, last time you spoke to CDC, y'all both referenced a book about leadership that he said he read every year. Do you happen to remember the title of that book?
Well, I don't read it every year. He read it every year. I don't remember the name of it. It wasn't I don't think it was Good to Great by Jim Collins, but it was something similar to that. I'll look that up. I'll ask Chris and see what he says for you, Menu too.
There you go. And then we're going to go to a basketball question, Jerry, real quick. What does the men's team need to do next year to get back to the level of 22-23? Is it developing returning players, getting reinforcements in the portal, or does Terry need to recruit better?
Well, he's got 2 future NBA draft picks at guard coming in and 2 guys that could be first rounders. And Trey Johnson is a guy that Texas hasn't had at guard a long time, if ever, honestly. I mean, Texas had TJ Ford and they've had DJ Augustine, 2 tremendous point guards. And they had KD, who was a special guy on the wing, small forward. But Trey Johnson's a 6'6" shooting guard that's projected top 10 pick. And I believe he actually is that level guy. So they have a big time guy with size coming in. He can handle the ball. You can play him in the ball screen game. And then Cam Scott, 6'5" guard out of South Carolina. I think he's a 2-year player and then first-round pick. But Texas has length and size at guard coming in. Trey Johnson, 6'6", Cam Scott, 6'5". Nick Cody coming in as a power forward. He may need a little time, 6'9", 6'8 and a half, 6'9" guy, face-up guys, kind of spread the floor 4. He's going to need to get stronger. But so much, Kendall Weaver comes back next year. So much is going to – I think Texas will go to the portal for point guard and a couple of bigs. One of the big guys that needs to not big guys, but a big players on the Texas roster that needs to take a step is Devin Pryor. Texas loves Devin Pryor. He graduated high school early this year. He's a 6'7" wing. He graduated early to use it kind of as a development year at the college level instead of not really being challenged at the high school level. How big a step he makes next year is going to be big for Texas, because you're going to see a totally different looking team on the perimeter in terms of size and length. I do think they need to find a facilitator in that group, but he's got to be able to shoot it. not a non-shooting facilitator. One of the great things that Frank Haith's always done is he's evaluated players really well. He's found really good shooters. I mean, if you remember, a guy like Kenton Paulino was not a highly recruited guy. He could really shoot it. He helped you spread the floor. A really good glue player there at a point guard, combo guard on an Elite Eight team. Hit one of the biggest shots in Texas history. So he's done a good job finding guys like that. Heck, Frank Haith convinced Rick Barnes to sign P.J. Tucker, and Rick Barnes had never seen P.J. Tucker play. So Frank Haith has a really good eye, good offensive coach. I think they got to find a shooter. They got to find two bigs. One needs to be more of a post defender. The other guy needs to be able to spread the floor. The college game is not dissimilar to the NBA game to me, especially with the three-point line being 21 and change. So it's more of a condensed court. So you have to space the floor well. You have to have shooting threats at least 3 spots on the floor at all times.
All right, y'all, we got time for 2 more questions here. This first one from Brendan, and he says, will Texas be the first team to have both running backs to rush over 1,000 yards since Georgia in 2017 with Sonny and Nick Chubb?
That's going to be interesting because, look, going into the SEC is going to matter. They'll have to run it against better teams next year, or better defensive fronts. I wouldn't suspect that. No. I would not suspect that. I think that if I had to guess right now, I'd put my money on Cedric Baxter being the 1,000-yard back. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Real quick, Rand Rodriguez asked, how are Mitchell's prospects looking like? Is he back another year? Asking about Dylan Mitchell. I think it's best if Dylan Mitchell takes his second-round pick and goes pro and just develops in the G League. I think that's what would be best for him, probably best for Texas as well. I think Texas in the college game, you need that small forward. If you're going to play a guy at small forward, he's got to be able to play with the ball in hand. He's got to be able to shoot it. You got to be a threat in the college game. I think one of the things that's made it tough on Texas this year was when they play the big lineup, because Dylan's not a wing. He won't be a wing until he's 24 years old in his development. I think it's best for him and probably for Texas with guys like Cam Scott and Devin Pryor waiting in the wings on the way at Texas. Dylan Mitchell takes his second round, starts that development process in the NBA. In Texas, it gets more to a traditional college 3-man.
And then our last question for today from Zane Petty. What was the coldest football game you have ever attended? What was the temperature? And where was it?
The Cotton Bowl against Miami was freaking cold. I don't know if it was definitely below freezing, and there was precipitation. And then there was what I saw on the field. It was cold all the way around. I'll just put it that way. That's for me. Jerry, what about you?
I actually was at a playoff game, JT Barrett's junior year. Oh, gosh, I can't even remember where in North Dallas it was. But it wasn't that it was 40 degrees. The wind was blowing about 30. So it felt very cold that day. By the way, that's when I knew JT Barrett was absolutely – I already knew it, but that's when I knew he was an absolute player. Because he actually threw the ball through that wind a little bit. And I was like, okay, that's a little different. But yeah, I think it was in the mid 30s with about a 30-mile-an-hour wind. It was a cold day because of the wind. I haven't been to any ice bowls. I'm not a Kansas City Chiefs fan that's going to buy $1,000 ticket and get my toes and fingers amputated. That's not
Hey, read this one. Marco Mendez, Nebraska in 2006. It snowed. I was in the band. The tuba mouthpiece made my lips bleed. I love it. Take one for the team, Marco.
I've never been to a game in those conditions. I'll say that.
I've been to a Green Bay Packers game in December in Green Bay, but my buddy had a ticket in the suite, so I didn't endure the guys. There were people out there, and it was definitely freezing. But I got lucky. I was having a cocktail and eating, little Smokies.
Marco said the win was worth it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Big time win.
All right, guys.
Was that the year that Aaron Ross caused the fumble on a 4th and 1, 2006? I think it was, Marco. Yeah.
Okay, y'all. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. Is there anything y'all are working on?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
David Keith Williams, this is for you. CJ and I are doing a live recruiting breakdown live at 10:40 this morning. So come right back here in a little over an hour, 10:40 for about 30, 40 minutes. CJ and I are going to do a recruiting breakdown live today. David Keith Williams is guys have asked for that a few times. We did it last week. We're going to do it again this week. Take your
it'll allow people to ask questions.
Yes, bring your recruiting questions.
One of the things we really like about the live streams, and we do some pre-recorded shows, but Jerry and I have been talking about this. We really like the live because it allows people to ask questions in the moment, and then even ask follow-up questions of something they've heard. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Blake, I do have one final question. What'd you get for what'd your wife and kids give you for your birthday yesterday?
So
I got to know.
I always tell them not to get me anything because I really don't want anything. But shit, we had a nice family dinner and some extended family came over and all that stuff. And that's really kind of low key deal. I'm not a big one to celebrate birthdays.
Well,
so
next year will be.
Yeah, let's not talk about next year. Hey, before we get out of here, we did this Friday with Coach Shipley, Bobby, and I mentioned it to you yesterday, and I forgot to do it. But we wanted to ask you 2 trivia questions to see if you knew the answer to them. And so I was about to bring up the On Texas Football banner, and I saw them, so I got to ask them to you real quick. The first live mascot of UT wasn't a Longhorn. It was a dog named Pig. Who was that dog named after?
I do not know this. All
right. So the answer is football team captain Gus Pig Dittmar. And then, it took
like the 1800s.
And then the first one that we actually asked was in 1900, a vote of students, faculty, staff, and alumni officially selected orange and white as the university's colors. But what colors came in second place by only 7 votes?
Blue and red.
This one will blow your mind.
Yeah. Maroon. Orange and maroon. Oh, Virginia Tech colors. Yeah. Virginia Tech's got some cool colors.
Yeah. Well, and of course we had to say that A&M took the seconds there, took the maroon.
Yeah, they did. They took sloppy seconds.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. We want to thank Texas Electricity Ratings along with Mando for sponsoring today's show. Thank you all for tuning in, for the great questions, conversation, and super chats. Be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com to continue the conversation, ask questions, and obviously get your recruiting news, team news, etc. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.